Most people think that when a man pulls away, the connection goes quiet with him. It doesn't. For the woman who feels things deeply, the connection doesn't go quiet at all. It gets louder. And that's the part nobody warns you about, because it doesn't make any sense until you've lived it. You're sitting there replaying the exact moment he went cold, trying to decide if you misread it. You're checking your phone because you can feel him, and you can't explain why you can still feel him, and that feeling is starting to frighten you. He said he needed space. He said he wasn't ready. He said it wasn't you, it was him. And some part of you believed him, while another part of you has been listening to the silence ever since, the way you'd listen for footsteps in an empty house. Here's the truth. The reason you can still feel him isn't because he's thinking about you every second. It isn't because you're crazy, and it isn't because you're weak. It's because you are what the books would call a super empath, though I don't want to spend our time on labels. You are someone whose nervous system is wired to feel the people she loves, to track them, to read the temperature of a room the second she walks into it. You read him the way a musician reads a crowd. And a gift, the one that made him feel so seen when you were together, is the same gift that is now keeping you in his orbit after he left it. I want to pause on that for a second, because it's the whole story. The thing that made him feel like the only man in the world is the thing that is now making his absence feel like a presence. You don't just miss him, you feel him. And feeling him is a full-time job he isn't paying you for anymore. You are running a surveillance operation on a man who asked you to leave, and you're the one paying for it, in sleep, in appetite, in the hours you'll never get back. Let me be clear about one thing. None of this means the bond was fake. None of this means you imagined what you had. The bond was real, it's still real. That's the trap. Because the bond being real is exactly what makes it so dangerous right now. And I need you to hear the difference between something that's real and something that's yours to keep. A bond can be real and still be wrong for you. A bond can be real and still be one-sided. A bond can be real and still be the thing that keeps you small. Real is not the same as good for you, and that distinction is going to save you years of your life. Here's what most people miss. When a dismissive avoidant pulls away, he doesn't actually leave. He retreats. He goes to a place where he can still watch you, still feel the pull of you, still know you're there, without having to carry the weight of actually choosing you. He wants the connection without the claim. He wants the warmth without the responsibility. And so he leaves the door open just enough that you can feel him, and he tells himself he's being honest, and he waits. He waits to see what you'll do. He waits to see if you'll come to the door, or if you'll finally close it. Now here's the part that's hard to hear. You are the one who keeps standing in that doorway. He left it open, yes, but you're the one who hasn't walked out of the room. You're the one who checks. You're the one who reads his silence like a message with no punctuation, hunting for a meaning he didn't put there. And every time you do that, you hand him a piece of your energy, and he feels it. Not consciously, not because he's cruel, because he's a man who has spent his whole life avoiding his own feelings, and your attention is the one thing that makes him feel real, without him having to do anything to earn it. You are the source of his feeling of being alive, and he knows it. And he will never tell you, because telling you would mean he has to do something about it. I'm going to say something, and some of you will disagree. He didn't expect you to go quiet. He expected you to chase instead. He expected the text. He expected the question, the plea, the careful re-explanation of what you meant, the offer to make it easier for him. That's the script he knows. That's the choreography every avoidant has run 100 times with 100 women. And it always ends the same way, with him feeling powerful and her feeling small. And then he gets to say he never asked her to feel that way. He gets to be the victim of his own distance. And you get to be the one who looks desperate. And the whole thing is a trap you were never told you were walking into. But you didn't send the text. Or you sent one and then you stopped. And now he's standing in a room that's suddenly quieter than he's ever known it to be. And he doesn't have a name for what he's feeling, because he's never had to feel it before. That's where the story actually begins, not with the breakup, not with the pull away, with the silence you gave him after he asked for space. And what that silence does to a man who has believed his whole life that being left alone was what he wanted. You grew up feeling everything before anyone else did. You were the one who noticed when your mother was tired, the one who softened the room before a fight could start, the one who could tell what a person needed just by the way they stood. That isn't a flaw. It's a kind of intelligence, and it's rare, and it's why people have always come to you. But here's the cost nobody tells you about. When you can feel everyone, you start to believe that everyone's feelings are your responsibility. And when you believe that, you will keep a man's feelings warm long after he has stopped being willing to keep yours. You will tend his fire while your own goes out, and you'll call it love, and it isn't. It's caretaking dressed up as devotion. That's what's happening to you right now, and I want you to see it clearly. He pulled away, and your first instinct wasn't anger. It wasn't even grief. It was concern. You started wondering if he was okay. You started wondering if you'd been too much, too intense, too present. You started wondering if you should have been smaller, quieter, easier. And somewhere in that spiral, you lost the plot. You forgot that he's the one who left. You started acting like you were the one who had to earn his way back. And that's the dynamic that keeps empaths trapped. And I want to walk through it with you one piece at a time, because it's not your fault, and it's also not going to change on its own. An avoidant doesn't leave because you're too much. He leaves because closeness is a threat to him. It's not personal, and that's the cruelest part, because it means there was nothing you could have done differently. You could have been perfect. You could have been the calmest, the most understanding, the most patient woman on earth, and he still would have pulled away, because the pull away isn't about you. It's about what intimacy does to him. It's about the part of him that learned a long time ago that needing someone is dangerous. And so he built a life around not needing, and then you came along and made him feel safe enough to want. And that terrified him more than any rejection ever could. So let me ask you something, and I want you to answer it honestly. If his withdrawal was never about you, then why are you still carrying it like a verdict on your worth? Why are you still reading his silence as a sentence you have to appeal? The bond you feel is real, but you've attached it to the wrong conclusion. You've decided that, because you can still feel him, he must still want you. And that's the error that's keeping you in his orbit, because the truth is much stranger than that. You can feel him because you're wired to feel him. That's it. It's not a sign. It's not a message from the universe. It's not proof that you're meant to be together. It's a nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do. And the moment you stop treating that feeling as a prophecy, you take the first real step out of his orbit. Because the feeling isn't the problem. The interpretation is. Let me be clear about something. I'm not telling you to stop feeling. I'm not telling you to become cold or hard or to pretend the bond doesn't exist. That would be asking you to amputate the best part of yourself. What I'm telling you is that the bond is yours, not his. It was always yours. Your empathy is the source of it. Your depth is the source of it. And he was just the person you happened to point it at. You can point it somewhere else. You can point it at yourself. And that right there is the whole quiet revolution that this conversation is really about. Picture this. It's 11 at night and he's alone and he's doing the thing he always does. He's scrolling, or he's staring at the ceiling, or he's half watching something he isn't actually watching. And somewhere in the middle of that nothing, he feels it. The absence. Not the absence of a girlfriend. The absence of you. The particular, specific, unbearable absence of the one person who used to feel him without him having to say a word. And he doesn't know what to do with that because he asked for this. He asked for space. He told himself he wanted to be alone. And now he's alone. And it turns out being alone with himself is the one thing he never learned how to do. Here's the thing about a dismissive avoidant. He is not afraid of being alone. He's terrified of being known. He can handle distance. He can handle silence, or he thinks he can. What he cannot handle is the feeling of being, because being seen means being vulnerable, and being vulnerable means being hurt. And he has a whole architecture inside him built to prevent that. So when you were together, he kept you at a careful distance, close enough to feel the warmth, far enough to stay safe. And then, when the warmth got too real, he pulled away entirely. He didn't leave because he stopped caring. He left because caring was becoming something he couldn't control. And here's something most people don't see coming. When you went quiet, you didn't just remove your presence, you removed his audience. And an avoidant, more than almost anyone, needs his audience. Not because he's vain, because his sense of himself has always been built from the outside in. He knows he's real because someone reflects him back. You were that reflection. You were the mirror that told him he was good, that he was wanted, that he mattered. And when you went quiet, the mirror went dark. And a man who has spent his life never looking at himself directly is suddenly forced to, and he doesn't like what he sees, and he doesn't have the vocabulary to say why. Now let me explain something slowly. What happens to a person who has built his whole identity on not needing anyone when the one person who made him feel real stops reaching for him? The first thing is relief. He feels lighter. He tells himself he made the right call. He tells himself he's free. And for a few days, maybe a week, he believes it. This is the part where you're in the most pain and he's in the least, and it feels profoundly unfair. And I want you to know that this phase is temporary. It's the calm before the mechanism kicks in. It's the stillness before the silence starts to do its work, because here's what happens next. The relief fades, and what replaces it is the silence. And the silence is not empty. The silence is full. It's full of everything he never said, everything he never felt, everything he pushed down for years. And now there's nothing to distract him from it. No warm body in the next room. No woman who reads his mood and softens it. No one to perform for. Just him and the quiet and the weight of himself. And a man who has never sat with his own feelings is now being asked to sit with all of them at once. And he has no training for it and no one to help him. And the only person who ever helped him is the one he told to go. And here's the part that undoes him. He starts to wonder why you're not chasing. And here's the thing. The wondering is what undoes him. He expected the text. He expected the question. He expected you to fight for him because every woman before you did, and because fighting for him was the only proof he had that he mattered. But you didn't fight. You didn't beg. You didn't explain yourself into a corner. You just went quiet and held your dignity in both hands and waited. And waiting for a man who has never had to wait for a woman in his life is a new kind of torture. He didn't expect you to be at peace. He expected you to be in pieces instead. He expected the desperate message, the late night call, the version of you that would make his leaving feel justified. Because if you fell apart, then he could tell himself he was right to go. But you didn't fall apart. And now he's left with the one outcome he never prepared for. A woman who can feel everything and who chose to feel it in silence. That's not the script. That's not the choreography. And a man who has never once been surprised by a woman is suddenly standing in a room he doesn't recognize, and the room is his own life. Let me build this image slowly, because it's the heart of the whole thing. The silence you gave him starts as a relief. Then it becomes a void. Then the void becomes an echo, because a void is only a void until you start listening for what used to fill it, and he starts listening. He starts listening for your laugh, your voice, your particular way of saying his name. And the echo is worse than the void, because the echo sounds like you, but it isn't you, and he can't make it stop. And the echo becomes a weight, not a heavy weight, not dramatic, just a weight he carries into his day, into his work, into his bed at night. And the weight becomes a question. He starts asking himself what he actually wanted, what he actually did, whether he actually meant it. And a question like that, in a man who has spent his life avoiding questions, is a reckoning. And a reckoning is the last thing he built his whole life to avoid. So he does what he always does. He reaches for the one thing that used to make him feel real. And that's when he reaches for you. That's the unseen bond. That's the mechanism. He doesn't come back because he's healed. He comes back because you're the only mirror he has, and a man who has gone dark needs his mirror back. And here's what you need to understand, because it changes everything. His return is not proof of love. It's proof of need. And need is not the same thing as love, and confusing the two is how empaths spend years of their lives orbiting men who will never be able to hold them. He will come back. He will. The question is never whether he'll come back. The question is what you'll do with yourself while he's gone, and what you'll be willing to accept when he returns. And here's the danger of that return, and I need you to see it before it happens, because it will happen. He'll come back, and he'll be warm, and he'll be present, and for a little while, it will feel like everything you hoped for. And then, just when you've let your guard down, just when you've started to believe, he'll feel the closeness again, and the closeness will scare him, and he'll pull away again. And you'll be left holding the same silence, wondering what you did wrong, when the answer is that you did nothing wrong. You did the only thing that was ever going to happen. You got close, and closeness is the one thing he cannot tolerate. And that's the cycle. And the cycle only breaks when one of you refuses to run it again. And it's not going to be him. It's going to be you. And here's something else I want you to understand about the orbit, because it's the thing that keeps empaths trapped for years. He doesn't want to lose you, and he also doesn't want to choose you. He wants you in the wings. He wants you close enough that you're still his, far enough that he's not accountable. And the wings is a terrible place to live, because it's a place where you're always waiting, always hoping, always performing, and never once chosen. And I want you to ask yourself a question. Do you want to be the woman he keeps in the wings? Or do you want to be the woman he chooses? Because those are two different lives, and you only get to live one of them, and he has already told you which one he's offering. Think about it like this. Chasing an avoidant is like trying to keep a volleyball underwater. The harder you push it down, the more force it builds, and the more violently it's going to come back up. You can spend your whole evening holding it under, exhausted, wet, embarrassed, while everyone watches you struggle with something that was never meant to be held. And the moment you let go, it doesn't sink. It rises, it floats. And you realize the only reason it ever felt like a fight was because you were the one fighting. He was never fighting. He was just floating, waiting to see how long you'd hold him under. And the whole time you thought you were keeping him, you were only exhausting yourself. And the silence is a mirror. When you go quiet, you hold a mirror up to him, and he has to look at what's actually in the room. And here's the thing about a mirror. It doesn't argue. It doesn't explain. It doesn't apologize. It just shows. And for a man who has spent his life avoiding his own reflection, a mirror is the most uncomfortable thing in the world. So he'll do anything to make you look away from it. He'll text you. He'll send a song. He'll ask how you are. He'll say he misses you and mean it, and then disappear again. Because the moment you respond, the mirror is gone, and he doesn't have to look at himself anymore. And that's the cycle. That's the orbit. That's the dance you've been in. And I want you to see the whole dance now, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. He pulls away. You chase. He feels powerful. He pulls back in, just enough. You feel hope. He gets scared of the hope. He pulls away again. And every time around the circle, you get a little smaller, and he gets a little more certain that you'll always be there. He's not doing this to hurt you. He's doing it because it works. It works for him. It gives him the warmth without the risk, the connection without the claim, the feeling of being wanted without the feeling of being known. And it only works because you keep showing up to the same door. And here's the question I want you to sit with. What happens to the dance when you stop showing up to the door? What happens to a man who has built his whole performance around an audience that has finally left the theater? He stands on the stage, in the spotlight, and the spotlight is empty. And for the first time in his life, he has to ask himself whether he was ever performing for you, or whether he was performing for the version of himself that only existed while you were watching. So let's talk about the power shift, because that's what's actually happening underneath all of this, and nobody's going to name it for you if I don't. When he pulled away, he had all the power. He had the upper hand. He was the one who left, and leaving is a position of strength, or it looks like one. But power in a dynamic like this isn't held by the person who leaves. It's held by the person who can leave and stay gone and be okay. That's the whole trick. He left, but he was never okay. He left, and then he waited to see if you'd come running, because your running was the only thing that made his leaving feel like a choice instead of a collapse. And you didn't run. You went quiet. And quietly, without either of you saying a word, the power shifted. Not because you played a game. Not because you were strategic. Because you finally did the one thing he never expected you to do. You chose yourself. And a man who has built his life around being chosen, around being chased, around being the one who's wanted, has no answer for a woman who is no longer waiting on his decision. He has no answer for a woman who has stopped asking what he wants and started asking what she wants. That's the moment the dynamic changes forever, and he feels it before he understands it. Here's the thing about the power shift. It isn't about him at all. It's about you. The moment you stop orienting your life around his temperature, his mood, his silence, his return, you take back something that was never his to hold. You take back your energy. And your energy is the most valuable thing you have. It's the thing you've been spending on him like it grows on trees, and it doesn't. It's finite. It's yours. And every hour you spend reading his silence is an hour you don't spend building the life that would actually make you happy. Every night you spend replaying his words is a night you don't spend sleeping. Every thought you give him is a thought you don't give yourself, and you are the one who needs your thoughts the most right now. I want you to notice something. You have been treating his absence like a wound that needs tending. But his absence is not a wound. His absence is information. It's the clearest information he has ever given you about who he is and what he's capable of. He is telling you, in the only language he knows, that he cannot hold you, that he cannot choose you, that he will not show up for you in the way you need. And the question isn't whether you can make him show up. The question is whether you're willing to keep waiting for a man who has already shown you exactly what he'll do. And the answer you give to that question is going to determine the next several years of your life. Let me be clear about one thing. I'm not telling you he's evil. I'm not telling you he doesn't care. I'm telling you that caring isn't the same as choosing, and you deserve someone who does both. He may love you in his way. He may love you more than he's ever loved anyone. And none of that matters if he can't stay. None of that matters if he keeps leaving. Because love that keeps leaving isn't love you can build a life on. It's love you can build a story on. And you've been living in the story. And the story has been costing you your life. You've been so busy being the heroine of a love story that you forgot to check whether the love was actually in the room. And now I want to turn to you, because this is the part of the story that actually matters. And it's the part you've been avoiding. You've been so busy feeling him that you've stopped feeling yourself. You've been so busy tracking his absence that you've forgotten you have a presence. And I need you to hear me when I say this. The woman he rejected is not the woman you are now. She's gone. She left the room the night he did, and she's been standing in the doorway ever since, waiting for him to come back to a version of her that no longer exists. And here's the quiet tragedy of that. Even if he came back tonight, even if he said all the right words, he'd be coming back to a woman who isn't there anymore. The you he rejected is gone. And the you that's left is the one who gets to decide what happens next. Here's what your silence is doing to you. And it's not what you think. You think it's making you smaller. You think it's making you invisible. You think it's punishment. But silence, when it's chosen, is the opposite of all of that. Silence is the place where you get to hear your own voice again after months of only hearing his. Silence is the place where you remember what you want, not what he wants. Silence is the place where the standard gets set, not by his behavior, but by your own. And I know it feels like waiting. I know it feels like you're doing nothing, but you're not doing nothing. You're doing the hardest work there is. You're learning to be with yourself, and you're learning that you can survive it. And that's a lesson no man can ever take from you. Let me walk you through what's actually happening in your body, because you deserve to understand yourself, and nobody has ever explained this to you. When you feel him, when you sense his mood, when you track his silence, your nervous system is doing what it learned to do to keep you safe. It's scanning for threat. It's scanning for the person who might hurt you, so it can prepare you. But here's the cruel irony. The scanning is the hurt. The constant checking is the wound. You think you're protecting yourself by staying attuned to him, but you're actually keeping yourself in a state of low-grade alarm. And a body in a state of low-grade alarm cannot rest, cannot heal, cannot rebuild. You are the one holding the alarm on, and you're the only one who can turn it off. And this is where I want to give you the sentence that's been underneath all of this, the one you'll be able to remember without trying. The unseen bond isn't his love reaching for you. It's your empathy, and it's yours to reclaim. Say it to yourself. The bond isn't him. It's you. It's your capacity to feel, your depth, your warmth. And you've been treating it like a leash he holds when it's actually a light you carry. He can't take it from you. He can't switch it off. He can only stand in its glow for as long as you let him. And the moment you turn that light toward your own life, everything changes. Not because he changes, because you stop being the one who's waiting in the dark. And here's what happens to him when you do that. And I want you to understand this without building your life around it. When you stop being the one who's waiting, he feels it. He feels the shift in the air the way you used to feel his moods. He notices that the silence has changed. It's not the silence of a woman who's hurt. It's the silence of a woman who's moved on or who's moving towards something. And that's a completely different kind of absence. The first silence is a cry for help. The second silence is a closed door. And a man who has spent his life walking through open doors has no idea what to do with a closed one. He'll knock, he'll circle, he'll test the handle, and then, eventually, he'll have to decide whether he's willing to change, or whether he'll let you go for real. And here's the thing about your energy that I want you to understand, because it's the engine of all of this. You have spent months, maybe years, pouring your energy into a man who could not hold it. You gave him your attention, your concern, your hope, your sleep. And energy, once given, doesn't just disappear. It goes somewhere. It went into him, and he couldn't hold it. And so it pulled around him, and he felt it, and he took it, and he never once asked if you had enough left for yourself. And you didn't. You ran yourself dry on a man who never asked for the refill. And now the silence is the first time in a long year that your energy has had nowhere to go but back into you. And that's not a loss. That's a return. That's the reclaiming of the fuel you were never meant to hand over. And I want to say something about the pattern, because it's the thing that will repeat if you don't name it. The pattern is not him. The pattern is the shape of the dance. And the shape of the dance is this. You give. He takes. You give more. He takes more. You shrink. He stays. And the pattern only survives because you keep agreeing to it. Not out loud, not in words, but in the quiet ways. You keep showing up to the door. And a pattern that you keep feeding is a pattern that will keep feeding you back the same meal. And I want you to ask yourself, honestly, how many years of this you're willing to repeat before you decide that the pattern is the problem and that the pattern is not his to change. It's yours to leave. And here's what I want you to notice about the magnetic, because it's a word that gets thrown around like it means performing. It doesn't. The magnetic is not the mystery you perform. It's not the game you play. It's the quiet, unshakable state of a woman who is oriented around her own life, who is not waiting on anyone's decision, who is willing to be with herself. That's the magnetic. And it's not something you put on. It's something you become slowly in the weeks and months of this silence, every time you choose yourself over the door. And here's the part that will unsettle him most of all. He didn't expect you to become more magnetic by becoming less available. He expected the opposite. He expected that his leaving would shrink you, that you'd dim yourself waiting for him, that you'd become a smaller version of the woman he walked away from. And instead, you became the woman he can't stop thinking about, the one who got better without him. And that's the one outcome his whole strategy was never built to survive. And I want to be honest with you about what that means, because I don't want to sell you a fantasy. Some men never change. Some men will circle that closed door for years, knocking softly, never willing to do the work, and you will have to be the one who walks away from the sound. But here's what I can promise you, and it's not a small thing. Whether he changes or not, whether he comes back or never speaks to you again, the woman who stops waiting is never the same. She's not the woman who got rejected. She's the woman who got free. And freedom, real freedom, the kind that comes from knowing you can be alone and still be whole, is more magnetic than any chase you've ever run. And the freedom is the thing he'll feel first, and the thing he'll never be able to name, and the thing he'll spend a long time trying to get back into the room. So let's talk about the woman you're becoming, because that's the real subject of this conversation, and it's been the real subject all along. The bond you felt with him was never the most important bond in your life. It just felt like it was, because he was the loudest thing in the room. But the bond that actually matters, the one that's been neglected for years, is the bond between you and yourself. And I know that sounds like something you've heard before, some soft thing said by someone who doesn't know your pain. But I'm not saying it softly. I'm saying it as a fact. You have been the last person on your own list for so long that you've forgotten you're on the list at all. And this silence, this terrible, lonely silence, is the first time in years you've had the room to remember. And here's something most people don't see coming. The version of you that he rejected is not the version of you that's going to walk out of this. The woman who loved him was generous and open and willing to forgive almost anything. She was beautiful, and she was real, and she was too good for a man who couldn't hold her. And she's not coming back. Not because she was broken, because she's been upgraded. Because pain, when it's actually felt, doesn't just hurt, it teaches, it sharpens, it gives you a clarity you could never have bought. And the woman who emerges from this will not be the woman who would have accepted the bare minimum. She'll be the woman who can't even see the bare minimum anymore, because her standard has been raised so far above it. I want you to notice the difference between the two women, because it's the whole point. The old you would have taken his return as a victory. The new you will take his return as information. The old you would have asked, does he want me? The new you will ask, does he add to my life or does he subtract from it? The old you would have felt lucky to be chosen. The new you will know that being chosen is the bare minimum, and that what you're actually looking for is being seen and held and kept. And that's not arrogance. That's not a checklist. That's just what happens when a woman finally believes that her time is valuable and that she doesn't have to spend it on a man who keeps leaving. And I want to give you some practical things now, because I don't want you to leave this conversation with only a feeling. I want you to leave with a direction. First, put the phone somewhere you can't see it. Not for a week, not as a punishment, but as a fact of your life. He doesn't get to live in your hand anymore. He doesn't get to be the thing you check before you check on yourself. When you feel the urge to look, that's not a signal to look. That's a signal to move. Stand up, walk, make tea, call a friend. The urge to check on him is your nervous system looking for its old job, and you're going to give it a new one. Second, re-enter your friendships. I know you've been hiding, because hiding is what empaths do when they're ashamed of their own pain. But your friends don't need you to be fine. They need you to be present. Let them feed you. Let them take you somewhere. Let them be the mirror you've been missing. the one that shows you your own face instead of his. You've been alone with this for too long, and alone is where the orbit lives. Company is where the orbit dies. And I don't mean company as a distraction. I mean company as a reminder that you are known and loved and seen by people who don't need to pull away to feel safe. Third, move your body. I'm not talking about a transformation. I'm talking about remembering that you live in a body and that your body is yours and that it has been holding his absence like a weight. Walk until your legs are tired. Swim. Dance in your kitchen. Do something that reminds your nervous system that you are alive and present and here, and that here is a place you get to inhabit fully without waiting for anyone's permission. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. And when you move, you remind your body that it belongs to you, that it isn't a waiting room for someone else's return. Fourth, retie the loose ends of your own life. The course you stopped caring about, the project you abandoned, the friend you owe a call, the room you said you'd reorganize. These aren't distractions. These are the bricks of the life you're building back, and every one you lay is a brick he can't stand on. You are not waiting for him. You are building. And a woman who is building has no time to stand in a doorway. She has a life to get back to. And here's the beautiful part. The more you build, the less the doorway calls to you. The more your own life fills up, the less room there is for his absence. And one day you'll look up and realize you haven't thought about him in hours and then in days, and the silence won't be a wound anymore. It'll just be quiet. And here's what I want you to keep, because it's the thing that will carry you through the hard weeks. The standard you set in this silence is not a punishment you're imposing on him. It's a description of the life you're no longer willing to accept. It's the line you drew in the sand, and it's not drawn out of anger, and it's not drawn out of revenge. It's drawn out of the simple, quiet knowledge that you have been giving more than you were receiving, and that the imbalance was never going to fix itself. And every time you're tempted to cross that line, to text him, to check on him, to make it easier for him, I want you to remember what it cost you to be the woman who always crossed the line. And I want you to ask yourself if you're willing to pay that price again. And I want to say one more thing about dignity, because it's the word that's been circling this whole conversation, and I want you to understand it as a physical thing. Dignity is something you carry. It gets heavier or lighter depending on what you tolerate. Every time you accept less than you deserve, you add weight to it, and you feel that weight in your chest, in your sleep, in the way you hold your shoulders. Every time you walk away from something that isn't for you, you set it down. And the woman who sets her dignity down, who stops carrying the weight of other people's unavailability, is lighter than she has been in years. She moves differently. She speaks differently. She occupies a room differently. And that lightness, that refusal to carry what isn't hers, is the most magnetic thing a woman can have. And it's the thing he'll feel from across a room. And it's the thing he'll never be able to name. And that's the transformation I want you to keep, because it's the one that actually lasts. The silence that started as your punishment becomes your peace. The silence that felt like rejection becomes the boundary that holds you. The silence that you thought was empty becomes the place where you finally heard yourself. And that's the arc of this whole thing, if you let it be. He pulled away, and you went quiet, and the quiet that he thought would make him free is the quiet that made you whole. The power shift isn't in whether he comes back. It's in what you become while you wait, and whether you're still waiting at all. And so we come to the end of this, and I want to leave you with the truth, the one that's been underneath all of this from the beginning. The unseen bond was never his. It was always yours. It was your empathy, your depth, your capacity to feel a person so completely that they felt real in your presence. And you pointed it at him, and he couldn't hold it, and he left. But the bond didn't leave with him. It stayed with you, because it was never his to take. It was always yours. And now you get to decide where it goes. You get to point it at a life that can hold it. You get to point it at yourself and let it warm you instead of burn you. The silence you gave him was the loudest thing you've ever said. It said, I am not available for less than I deserve. It said, I will not chase a man who cannot choose me. It said, my dignity is not negotiable. And whether he ever understands that or not, whether he ever comes back or never speaks to you again, that silence changed you. It set the standard. It built the boundary. It gave you back your self-respect. And self-respect is the only thing that has ever made anyone magnetic. Not the chase, not the mystery you perform, not the game you play. The quiet, unshakable knowledge that you are worth more than you've been settling for. So keep the silence, not as a weapon, not as a game, as a home. Because the woman who can be quiet and be whole and be at peace with her own company is the woman who will never again accept the bare minimum. And that woman, the one you're becoming, is the one he'll never be able to forget, and the one you'll never need him to remember. Because you'll remember yourself. You'll remember your worth. You'll remember that you were never the one who needed to come back. He was. And the comeback that matters isn't his. It's yours. It's the quiet return of the woman who stopped waiting to be chosen and finally chose herself. And that's the unseen bond finally in the right hands. Yours.